Welcome to the Spooky Chris podcast. I am your host, Chris Ringler. I am an author, filmmaker, patient zero. You can find all my stuff at spookychris.com. And this is my podcast. So when the pandemic started, 18 months ago, I think all of us didn't know what to expect. It's I remember the first days, we went into lockdown here in Michigan, and I was able to get to the grocery store and load up on groceries, and then we went into lockdown, and we had heard all these reports of this virus spreading and how dangerous it was and how deadly. And it kind of formed a shadow, and that shadow stretched over 2020. And we thought, as 2020 ended and they started rolling out vaccines, we thought, well, we made it to vaccines, and once we all kind of can get vaccinated, we can start getting back to normalcy. Well, as is usually the case with these kind of things with viruses and all of that excitement, it mutated. And suddenly the vaccines were mostly effective, but not completely, because there's not really, so many people like to align COVID with the flu. And if you think of the flu, there's a new strain just about every year because it keeps morphing. It adapts. Welcome to nature. So as we entered 2021, thinking that hot girl summer was back and we could all get back to a sense of normalcy, we started to realize that while we needed to still get vaccinated, maybe the vaccinations weren't going to be as completely effective as we had hoped. And the further into the year we've gotten, the more they realize that, much to the delight of the anti-vaxxers and anti-maskers and political conspiracists who think that everything is about their personal freedom and their life being interrupted, and not about any kind of greater thing, because the world is set up to hold them back and to get in their way, because they are, chosen, of course, as crazy people always think. So what and I think people like Fauci tried to say, and I think people tried to say time and again, is that the vaccine is the best defense we have for now, partnered with distancing and masking and trying to be mindful of our surroundings and what we're doing. But we didn't want to hear that. We still don't, because the idea that we have to curtail our freedoms as Americans is something that we are loath to do. The modern American wants it, and wants it now, and wants it for them. And I can't say that I'm any different than that. So saying that would have, you probably would have had, less people taking vaccines, because they would think, well, what's the purpose? What's the point? And I think too, what we didn't realize is that the vaccines are to help fight it if we were to get it. The hope is that it would keep it away from you, but if you did get it, it would help you. It would kind of put in place a security system, a defense system to fight it. I remember all last year, my wife and I being deathly scared because she was pregnant. She had a high risk pregnancy. It was a hard pregnancy. And it was worrisome that she could get it. When we had to go into the hospital, we had to pass the COVID area in the hospital, the section. And, you worry because you do everything you can to be safe, but not everybody else does. You'll find people who they'll wear a mask begrudgingly. They'll have it under their nose, or they wouldn't wear it at all. And then you have people who just want to troll the world, and they just pretend to cough and pretend that they're going to give you something. And it's just, we live in a crazy world. And it has only gotten crazier in these last few years. But I mean, it's always been, but it has definitely gotten crazier in these last few years. And COVID and Trump have brought out the crazies to the forefront, because now we celebrate anti-vaxxers and we give them the airtime and let them talk about how, oh, well, God is keeping me safe, and I don't have to worry about vaccines or the virus because God will keep me safe. Not realizing that faith, while good, is a foundation, not a defense. That omnipotent though God may be, it has better things to do than to worry about you not protecting yourself. It gave you free will and intelligence, etc., in science to fight off the things like this, and instead of crossing your arms and saying, save me. That's kind of like, imagine, humans treated as if we are teenagers getting into spending trouble with a credit card and then turning to our parents and oopsie poopsie, can you pay that off? And that's the world we're in. My wife and I've talked about it many times before, we couldn't do many of the things you traditionally do when you have, when you're expecting a child. We couldn't have the in-person baby showers, the announcements, any of the traditional things. We couldn't celebrate. We really couldn't even, see outside of close family, for fear of endangering her and the baby. So we had to let go of so much stuff, much like many other people. Like when pitted with, people that have lost family members, or people that have gotten so sick the rest of their lives are changed, it's hard to really feel legitimized in complaining because you can't go to the movies, you can't go to a concert, you can't see your friends as easily as you could before. You can't stamp your feet and say it's not fair when people are losing loved ones. And folks are all but going crazy trying to help fight this with little to no support from the country. You had a president in place that downplayed it until he had it, and then because he was the president, was able to get super drugs to save him, and then he still flouted it to show what a tough guy he was, that he didn't need a mask because he was the golden child. It's typical silly strongman stuff, which was kind of his brand. It is his brand. When you don't have real things for people to look at and outwardly see that your deeds and your acts and your words, you put on the fanciest robes you have to fake it, as they say. You fake it until you make it. It worked, but it has definitely taken a toll on us. It took a toll on me. Over the last few months, I have definitely started to fray at the edges due to lockdown and COVID fears. I was so anxious going back to work. Part of that being, I know full well not everyone is vaccinated there at my work. Where my wife works, not everyone wants to vaccinate. Very few people will wear masks. We didn't know getting my daughter into daycare. We didn't know what that would look like. We were scared to death because the daycare didn't mask up and didn't mandate vaccinations. So going into that, it gave me huge anxiety. Our daughter was 10 months old when she was going to go enter daycare. So you start to worry, well, what if? But we had no choice. I don't make enough that I cannot, I can't work. And she doesn't make enough, or she can't work, and she doesn't make enough that I can't work. We need both incomes. That's just how it is. And the days of working from home are gone. So there was no choice but to, just trust the process, as they say. But in trusting the process, you start to worry that what if, the two words that we fear the most. So we fast forward to last weekend. Well, 2 weekends ago. My daughter had entered daycare. She'd been there for 3 days. It had been hard. It had been hard on all of us. She was having a hard time. It was hard for me because I was with her pretty much every day for 10 months, taking care of her. And well, before that even, obviously. And it was hard on my wife because she was afraid of what if. And so we entered that first weekend. We felt good, though, because we had all kind of survived. Well, that Saturday, my daughter started to get sick, started vomiting, which kids spit up, but this was full-on vomit. She was in a bouncer and had eaten, a couple hours earlier, and straight vomited. So we cleaned her up and kind of were watching her and trying to take it easy with her, and gave her a little love. And later in the day, when I was feeding her again, she ate some and then just shy of projectile vomited all over me. And we were getting very concerned because she didn't feel good. Vomiting is not a normal thing for little kids, something I didn't realize. And so we took her to the ER. We talked to a friend who's a nurse at her, our daughter's pediatrician, and she said, take her to the ER because you want to make sure that she doesn't get dehydrated. So we took her, and luckily, the hospital the ER was packed. So luckily this place has a pediatric ER. So we went there, and that as well got packed. And we waited and waited and waited. At one point my wife, we were there so long. We were there all told 5 hours. My wife went to get stuff to make a bottle to give my daughter. I was worried she would throw it up, but she was hungry and she needed something. We'd given her some snacks, but she needed something. And she handled the bottle fine, no big deal, didn't throw up. We were worried because a kid sat next to me, he and his mother, and he had a mask. They both had masks on. But it was probably 8 feet away. But his mother was terribly upset because she kept insisting he might have COVID. So you start getting scared. Again, what if? So we were on the verge of over and over again going home. Just because this was we saw 3 families leave. This is the state of our emergency rooms because of COVID. Because of the nonsense of people not wanting to vaccinate and not wanting to take precautions. And then they weren't letting you know what was going on, what your status was or anything. They would just come and get the next person, and that was it. We watched 3 families leave. One little girl had bitten through the connective tissue between the top and bottom lips and the gums, something I didn't know you could do. Her family left after several hours. Another little girl had fallen and hit her head and was still bleeding. And they had left after several hours. So we watched a few families just leave. Finally got back there. They checked her out, talked to a physician's assistant or something, and then the main physician, and then the assistant kid, but whomever. like a intern, or not, like a physician's intern or something, someone in school for it. And they thought she looked fine. They said just to kind of keep an eye on her. She thought it was a stomach bug, no big deal. Take her home, love her up, kind of keep an eye on her. Sunday she's a little blah, but she's doing okay. So I take her to daycare Monday, and I am at work, and it's late morning, and I get a call from the daycare, and they are concerned because she has diarrhea. And when a kiddo, they have a policy of like a kiddo has consistent diarrhea, then they send them home because they're worried that they have a bug. So they say that. I get a hold of my direct supervisor. We work it out. I go pick her up. I get some Pedialyte for our daughter, and I pick her up, and I head home, and we're, definitely worried. She would be home the next day, Tuesday, so she gets to spend a day with her mother and just kind of rest. So the next day, that Tuesday, I was at work, and I didn't feel right. And, all morning I just kind of felt this not great and felt like something was wrong. And I all evening even, I had like that sick kind of weight in your stomach, like you're going to be sick. And it's like a train, and the train's far off, but you know it's coming. And, I finally had a couple, scares, and then finally like let a coworker know, hey, because I watch a front desk at where I work, like I gotta go throw up basically. So I ran back there. It's another false alarm. It's like, son of a gun. Go back up front. My coworkers had pieced out, so I was like, oh, okay. Everyone has gone to lunch. I'm just hanging out. It's almost my lunchtime, and then all of a sudden the real deal hits, and I run back, and I'm throwing up like there's no tomorrow. I text my supervisor, let her know, and go up. She has somebody watch the desk. I go home, and I just feel like crap. And for the next, I end up having to not go in Wednesday. I have to stay home. I stay home with my daughter. And I'm throwing up, and I can't stop. I'm getting weaker and weaker because I can't eat anything. I tried Gatorade and some graham crackers, and I just threw it all up after a couple hours. And I just felt miserable, and I couldn't do anything. I felt bad because I couldn't help my wife take care of my daughter. I just was miserable. So Thursday comes, and I feel a little better. Heading to work, and I'm doing the work stuff again. Get another call later from daycare, and they call to let us know that our daughter has a slight fever, and because of that, they like she's doing okay, but in having a slight fever, they have to send her home. So once again, I have to have somebody kind of come and watch the desk, and I have to go home. So like I've already missed most of like half day Monday, half day Tuesday, all of Wednesday. Now I'm going to miss half a day on Thursday. So I go home, and I go in and pick her up, and I go home, and I take care of her, and she can't come back until, basically the next week because of that, because I need a couple days to make sure that she's okay and everything. So I have to get clearance to not be there Friday. Everybody, my work works with me, and that's great, and I'm able to stay home with her. Well, over the weekend, I'm getting more and more kind of like worn down. It has stopped coming out from the top and has started coming out from the bottom, and I'm sick, and I feel weak. And as we head into the weekend, my throat starts hurting, and I'm congested, and I'm worn out. My wife starts getting the same thing. She starts getting sick, like where she's vomiting. And we don't understand what's going on. I'd gotten my daughter into the doctor on that Thursday, and the doctor, looked her over and it's like, it is a stomach bug, but we're going to give her a COVID test just to be safe. I don't think it's COVID, but we just got to do this to be safe. We should have results Monday. Cool. Go home, spend the weekend. We're all kind of miserable, all kind of sick. My daughter's stuffed up. And it's miserable because she is crying and upset because she's so stuffed up and she's got a terrible cough. Her chest sounds like Rice Krispies. My wife's giving her some Tylenol, baby Tylenol and some, baby medicine, like a cold medicine. And we're not feeding her as much because she just isn't as hungry. And we're just kind of like letting her rest, and she's sleeping a lot and letting her rest. We all have a terrible, just hard weekend. So I go to work on Monday, and my wife was able to stay home with her for at least part of the day just while we waited for the COVID test, because they had to come back clear before she could go back to daycare. So I'm at work, and my wife messages me, Lily has COVID. So our worst nightmare has come true. Within being at daycare for a couple of days, she has already gotten COVID. Our 10-month-old daughter that we had done everything possible to keep safe and healthy. I got a hold of my boss. I got my stuff because clearly if she had COVID, there's a chance we had COVID. So I got everything. I kind of wiped everything down with Clorox wipes. Apologized, got the heck out of there, got home. My wife is a wreck, understandably so. Because what if is now a thing? She talks to, the doctor's office for our daughter afterwards, and they're basically like, just keep an eye on her. If she starts to have trouble breathing, you have to call an ambulance because they have things that'll help her breathe. So then you start to worry, like, is that a thing? And you say, I thought, you think, all these idiots over and over again, kids can't get COVID, don't mask up, don't distance, don't you take their sports away, don't you take their dances away, don't do anything. Kids can't, kids are fine, kids are resilient, kids nothing happens to. It has been utter hell this past week and a half, 2 weeks. Watching our daughter struggle with this. She's cried more in these 2 weeks, not understanding what's happening to her, than she has in her whole 10 months. Hearing that wet, thick cough, the hitch in her breath from time to time. Like it's a miracle that we can get her kind of giggling from time to time, because that kind of shows, she's still Spitfire. She's still our daughter. But you start to worry about the next what if. And the same goes with my wife. We went and got COVID tested, and we both came back positive. So we both have COVID. So as I record this, I am COVID positive, and we are both off of work until we can kind of piss clear, as it were, until we're free of the virus. I luckily have PTO days left. I have about 10 days left, or 10 or 12. So even if they were talking about trying to let me work from home, but worst case scenario, I have days I can burn. My wife doesn't, and her work has put her on, they will not let her work from home. So, and she makes the predominance of our income here. So that's essentially 2 weeks without her income. I don't know how we'll do that. It occurs to me there's a lot of people out there. It's interesting looking at it now from inside the bubble, and the anger I have for these conservatives and these anti-vaxxers and these conspiracy nuts has deepened. Just the audacity. What if folks don't have insurance like we do? What if they can't afford to miss this work, which they have no choice in? What if, my wife has a bad immune system, Like, if she and I weren't vaccinated to begin with, like, and again, we are breakthrough cases. We were both vaccinated. Our second vaccinations were in April. So we are breakthrough vaccination cases. What if we weren't vaccinated? This is the sickest I have ever been in my life. Like, hands down. I feel absolutely horrible. As of today, I have a sore throat. I'm stuffed up. I feel ache. I'm tired. I don't always think straight. I just, it's strange because it's like layer after layer is something else. And I just don't know, I don't know where the end of this tunnel is. I luckily still have my taste. I still have my scent. I mostly have an appetite, not all the time, but mostly. My wife and I had different vaccines, so we've been hit differently. So all this is interesting. It was maddening when we had to get tested. So for as many people as need tests, they're hard to find. We had a place that we could go to that our insurance pays for it. So we were lucky enough to be one of the 90 people I think they vaccinate or that they can check in a day. But they ran out and people kept going up there trying to get tested. And they were turned away until the next day. They had me, because I had to go get the results. We kind of knew while I was there getting tested. My voice kind of popped up, and she was like, "Well, she's positive." But it was going to be a little while, so I went back up, and they made me sit in the waiting room. And yeah, the chairs are kind of separated. But I knew I had COVID, and they had me sitting there in public, and I kind of just had to wait until they got to me. And they had to because they wouldn't let me just give me the results. They had to talk to me, and for 2 minutes, just say, "Oh, you have to isolate, and you have to develop it." Like, it was the stupidest stuff. But they had me in public for that. Mask or no, I double masked it, but I still have it. My daughter's daycare finally sent something out to their patrons today, and we feel awful. But I mean, she caught it from someone there, so as guilty as we feel, we didn't originate it. She brought it home, so somebody was passing it around and just didn't get caught first. But so now we're in it. We're in knee deep, and suddenly this thing we had tried desperately and sacrificed so much to avoid, we are in. All while we've watched people go to beaches, go to concerts. I know so many people, and whatever, people have to do what they're going to do, but so many people go out in the world without masks now because they're vaccinated. And I just laugh because, I masked all the time. And I got it. And I was vaccinated, and I got it. And I wasn't going to restaurants. I wasn't going to concerts. I wasn't going to movies. I didn't go to, bars. And I wonder how bad this can get for everyone. And this is bad, but we aren't getting it, I don't think, as bad as many. It's like this joking, well, it's just like the flu. Yeah, I guess I can totally see where one can say it is like the flu. If the flu is long lasting, say, because flu usually, if everybody's had flu pretty much, it lasts about 3-4 days. I'm into my second week of this, and it seems to have no end in sight. There's not a Theraflu I can take. There's not something I can take to get rid of this. And then you have to wait and see what are the damages to my body for the rest of my life, to my wife, to my daughter. What happens for the rest of our lives now because of this? My mom had polio as a kid, and that changed her life. She had something called post-polio syndrome as a later adult, and that screwed her up. That was one of the reasons I think dementia was, kind of took hold after her strokes. So it's hard to take seriously anybody who shrugs off COVID because they haven't experienced it. It's grotesquely fascinating and ironically funny in the worst way. All of these conservative hosts and such that have died of it recently, and on their deathbeds, recorded, oh gosh, you better take it seriously and get vaccinated. It was like, again, I guess that was the old adage of there's no atheist in a foxhole. I remember that from philosophy class, philosophy of religion. They said that, and I just kind of laughed to myself because I'm like, that's not faith. That's just covering your bases. That's praying to whoever will listen, just in case, so that you don't, so you can preserve yourself. It's self-preservation. And, it's finding religion at the end. It's unfortunately sometimes too late. So all we can do is go forward. We are COVID positive. My wife, with her health issues, has to take a bunch of medication now to try to help herself because she has breathing troubles to begin with. I'm taking cold medicine, just trying to kind of kick back some of this stuff that's hitting me. And our daughter, we can just kind of give her what we can and love her up and let her get the rest she needs and hope for the best. And though I'm an atheist, pray that we all kind of come through this without too much damage. And all I can say to you is be careful. We all gotta walk the walk we gotta, that fits us best, and gotta live our lives. But this is no joke. Like, as you keep hearing, you hear over and over again, I don't know how many people have to say this. Oh, COVID is no joke. Without, people, oh, I vaccinated. It doesn't matter. Like, it could still get you. It can still put you down. And it's just not worth it. It's not worth going to the bars. It's not worth going around to stadiums and concerts and pretending that life is normal, because it's not. We have to get back to a normalcy, but we have to do it safely. And we're not doing that. All I can hope is that we come through this okay, and that you never have to go through this, as all of our loved ones worry over us. And what if? What if the worst case scenario were to come to play? And we're going to hope for the best.